So the Alternative for Deutschland party in Germany is currently in second place in the polls. Now, it's a big gap between them in first place currently, which is a mainstream party in Germany. However, it is gaining in popularity. You can actually see that slowly over time it's gaining in popularity. Now, of course, the establishment's calling it quote unquote right wing, and they even discussed that if for some reason, if the Alternative for Deutschland party were to win the election hands down, that they would pull Romania. In other words, they would get essentially they would nullify the election. They've actually openly bragged about this in Germany. And that just goes to show you that, like, the European Union is showing its true colors in this way. Now, there's a lot to talk about with Germany potentially leaving the EU. It's something they should have done a long time ago, so they didn't have the immigration crisis. But of course, the establishment, the oligarchs that are in charge in Europe wanted that. They wanted the immigration crisis because they're replacing the population. And you got a lot of egalitarians that are just anti-Western. But anyway, with that said, there are a lot of considerations here with Germany. First of all, leaving the European Union is inevitable regardless. The European Union is it's kind of a stupid idea. We're talking about tying all these countries together in a currency union, but every country has its own fiscal policy, right? So you have different fiscal policies, but the same currency. Well, that doesn't work very well. That means that some countries pay for other countries, essentially. And then also at the same time, you have different goals too. Germany had a hyperinflation crisis in the 1920s with the Weimar Republic. The Deutschmark at that time was hyperinflated to worthlessness, and that's part of the reason why the Nazis were able to get in charge in the early 1930s. It was off of that economic crisis. And then also Eastern European countries experienced the same thing when the Soviet Union collapsed and the Warsaw Pact fell apart. But countries like France, for example, they have a very generous welfare programs and they like to spend like crazy. So, and the French franc wasn't a really solid currency compared to the Deutschmark or British pound. So, the French love the idea of having a common currency because essentially it's a transfer of wealth from the productive countries to a less productive country, that is France. The European Union is also not very good for the Southern European countries because they had a hollowing out of their industries. And now the same thing's happening in Germany. They're having a hollowing out of their industries. A lot of their auto manufacturers have just moved their industrial plants to the United States, essentially. They're talking about cutting production in Germany because they just don't have the market to sell to in Germany. So there's a lot to unpack, like I said. Now I am reading an article by The Telegraph. That's a mainstream article. Not a big fan of the legacy media, but I will put a link in the description below where I talk about this. Yes, Germany should exit the European Union. They should have done this a long time ago. You need a change in who's running that country, just like we have in the United States. We are in the process of changing that. It's going to be a long process because those people are still very much in power. And you need the same thing happening in Germany. However, Germany, like most countries around the world, has a more authoritarian history. The Germans seem to be more sheepish when it comes to crises or a looming crisis. So we'll see how this goes. I hope that the Alternative for Deutschland wins the election. Like I said, currently they're in second place, but we'll have to see what happens. And it's going to be very tricky to navigate this. This is not going to be smooth. A lot of the damage has already been done. And it's going to be like navigating around a minefield politically. But, I hope that things work out very well. And let's hope that there's a massive wave of reform in Germany.